Basically, what we're going to do today is we're going to take a look at advertising. We're going to talk about brokerage relationships, and we're also going to take a field trip. We're going to dive into FMLS, and we're going to look at the GAR 2022 contract. We're actually going to fill out the contract together, and we're going to talk about different sections of that contract. One resource that was introduced to me when I was a newly licensed agent, and one that is on every desk for every member of our broker team here at Solid Source, is the Red Book. Hey, welcome. Is the Red Book on real estate contracts in Georgia. And this book was recently refurbished, so to speak. Because of my background, you're probably not going to be able to see this on Zoom, but the Red Book's actually, anyone here in person, is actually 2 volumes now. So it's 2 books. It talks about contract basics, counter offers, earnest money, all those things you see on the left-hand side of the screen there, estate sales, 1031 exchanges, brokerage relationships. It really goes through so many scenarios to help you guys. I think it's the #1 resource. I'm so glad you're here. Good to see you. So it is worth its weight in platinum gold. So you guys, if you don't invest in any other resource book, I would definitely recommend the Red Book on real estate contracts in Georgia. The old version was just 1 volume, and now it's 2. So it's better than ever. Seth Weissman, you guys know Seth Weissman and Ned Blumenthal actually co-wrote that book together. And then just, of course, as a member of the Solid Source family, I just want to remind everybody that we're here for you. We're always happy to look at drafts of contracts, answer any contract questions that you have. We have a non-compete broker team, so I'm not out in the field trying to sell property, trying to compete against you. We're dedicated to helping you be successful. We have in-house attorneys, free monthly CE, like the one that you are experiencing today, Facebook group, YouTube channel, and a lot of great vendors such as Weissman. And again, today we're going to be doing a field trip. We're going to be hopping in and looking at FMLS and looking at that contract. We're going to get up close and personal with it. But before we do that, I want to cover some homework. I want to talk about advertising, and I also want to talk about brokerage relationships. And so y'all know I love a pop quiz. So, but I got to get you ready for the pop quiz. I want to jump right into the pop quiz. I'm like, I got to at least give you a little bit of info first. So just to make sure we cover some basics first, how does the Georgia Real Estate Commission, how did they define advertising? So they define advertising as any manner, method, or activity by which a licensee, through the use of any media, could be the internet, right, makes known to the general public real estate for sale, rent, lease, or exchange. So when you are advertising, it needs to be under the direct supervision of the broker and in the name of the company that you work for. So as a Solid Source agent, we ask that you send all advertising proofs to broker@solidsource.com. We're going to take a look at it. Anything needs to change, we're going to let you know exactly what needs to change and why. And we can re-review it to get it to an approval place. Or if it's perfect, we'll go ahead and approve it right away. That also is true for websites, and agent websites can be one of the trickiest areas for agents. So just keep that in mind as well. Now, when it comes to advertising specific real estate for sale, rent, lease, or exchange, that's when the Real Estate Commission is most particular. So if you're just saying, hey, contact me for properties for sale in Alpharetta, that's one thing, right? I call that more general. Looking to buy or sell, reach out to me. But when we're advertising that brand new listing at 123 Main Street, Real Estate Commission is really specific. So basically in those cases, I call it the big 3. You want to always make sure that the company name and the company phone number is there in equal or greater, usually it's equal, size, prominence, and frequency compared to that of any licensees on the ad. So essentially what that's going to mean is you would never want to have a situation where your name was twice as big as the company name, your number is twice as big as the company name. Just if you think about it, rules of equal, you're going to be able to keep it in a good place. And with the name of that firm, whether it's contained in a logo or not, I know that Solid Source Realty and Solid Source Realty Georgia is contained within a logo, but that would still, the sizing of the name is something that you would want to look at. All right, you guys. So I think I gave you enough to jump into our quiz. So this is, and I'm just going to make sure, you guys can see it. So this is a postcard that an agent hypothetically sent to broker at solidsource.com for us to look at and approve. And what do you guys think about this postcard? Can I go ahead and can I approve Clara's postcard, or would I ask her to make some revisions to the postcard? She doesn't have the brokerage phone number.
The office, yeah, the solid source information.
Right. Because she is advertising this new listing, this 207 Rosewood Way. So she's the most strictest GREC advertising rules would apply to her here. There's actually one more thing I would get her to do. This is a little bit of not really a trick question, but a little bit more advanced. So she is a realtor and she references realtor, but what NAR asks us to do, they're very particular about how we use the term realtor. They ask us to put the registration mark there. So I'd ask her to put that little R there. So she was very thankful for the advice because she wants to stay in compliance. And she revised the postcard and she sent it back to us. And this is how she sent it back to us. So what do we think now? So what I'm going to do too, you guys, those who are virtually and are not here with me physically, I'm going to do, I apologize. I'm going to repeat what you guys are asking me so that they can hear me too. So I had a great question. What about the office address? What about the office address? So the office address is technically never required by the Real Estate Commission. Some agents will prefer to put that on a business card, but it's not required. So it would be your choice. All right, so this one's good. This one is good. So she adjusted, actually Solid Source Realty is a little bit bigger in the logo, which is fine. She put the registration mark, she put the office phone number and her extension. So one thing, everybody has an extension who works at Solid Source, and that's cool because if someone calls the office and they're asking for you, especially if you have a listing, we can send them directly to your cell phone with that extension. Right. The question was, any advertisement technically needs to come to the broker team first to review. First, that is technically true. You are welcome. Okay, so the fun continues. So the following is required prior to advertising real property for sale, rent, lease, or exchange. Seller's verbal permission, written permission, or assigned commission agreement. All right, got a couple different guesses coming at me here, but this one's actually going to be B. So the written permission. So the Georgia Real Estate Commission would require that we have written permission to advertise the property before we advertise it. So if we're going to put a sign in a yard, if we're going to do a Facebook post, we need to have written permission. Now, the great thing about the Georgia Association of Realtors listing agreement is that it includes naturally that written permission and also protection for commission and a lot of other protections that GAR has baked into that agreement as well. As a rule of thumb, is it good for everything to be written? Absolutely. Is it baked into the agreement? Yes. So the GAR listing agreement it expressly gives the broker and therefore the agent the right to advertise that property. Is there another form? No, just the listing agreement. The listing agreement would be the key there. So what about this one? So when advertising property, the name of the brokerage firm and the firm's telephone number should appear. This one might be too easy compared to any licensees at least once on the advertisement in equal or greater size, prominence, and frequency, or conspicuously disclosed on the advertisement. So this is probably B, right? All right, good job. That one's definitely going to be B. So let's talk about websites, because I mentioned earlier, this is one of the areas that agents can get into the most trouble because there's a lot going on an agent website. There's a lot of pages. Everybody likes to write a bio and all that good stuff, which is wonderful. But what does the Real Estate Commission say about these websites? So the name and telephone number of the brokerage firm, where should it be? Absolutely. So I had a really good guest here in Roswell. The answer, what she stated was that she feels like, of course, the homepage, but she really feels like it should be on every viewable page of the website. And you are correct. So the Real Estate Commission would want it on every, good job, on every viewable page. All right, good job. Everybody online is doing a good job as well. Question number 4. All of the following are required to contain the brokerage firm's telephone number, except. So which one of these? One of these is different than the others. Listing flyers, business cards, or websites. A listing flyer is going to be advertising a specific property.
Yes.
So that the strictest, the rule of 3 is going to come in. The business card normally is not going to have any real property on it. It's just going to be about you. So that would be the one that would be different, and that would be the one that would not be required to contain the office phone number. Now, if you like it on there and you want to put your extension behind it, and some agents do, there's no problem with doing that. Correct. So a comment in Roswell, just a way to kind of just categorize it in your mind as property and non-property, basically. And I agree with that. Yeah, I do. So what about some yard signs? Let's take a look at a couple of yard sign examples here. And this one is for John Doe. And John Doe happens to be a team leader. And so he's got his team name on here. What are some thoughts about his yard sign? A couple of people saying the logo is missing, company's name is too small. That is true. And then, so you guys are looking at it really close, which is awesome, but you really called out the issue here is the size, and I would argue the prominence, just because the team name's in red, but the size and the prominence of John Doe. Now, John Doe mentioned John Doe Realty Team, and John Doe happens to be a team, so that's fine. I will just say, the Real Estate Commission has been talking about teams for the last couple of years, and they're basically making changes to advertising rules for teams. They're defining teams as 2 or more licensees working under the same broker, and the team names have to have the word team or group in it. So if he gave this to us, I'm going to mix the story up just a little bit. If he gave us this advertisement and it just said John Doe Realty, I would not approve that. I would say, you know what, John Doe, we got some advertising rule changes that are taking place, and you need to have team or group there. And 2, it looks a bit misleading. Keep in mind, the Real Estate Commission is in place to protect the public. They are our licensing authority. They have rules we need to follow. They could always take our license back if we were not good agents, but they are really looking to protect the public. And so they felt like it was misleading. Over the years, they've struggled with it. So they're just clarifying some things, but John already has it that way. And so we gave him that feedback. He took it, he sent it back to us. And this one we could approve. This one actually looks pretty well. In his case, his company is not a logo. There are some real estate companies that their name, they don't necessarily use a logo. Right. Question came in Roswell. Wouldn't he just want the company name to be bigger? He could certainly make it bigger, but he wouldn't be required to by the Real Estate Commission. But I will just piggyback on that, and I'll say the Real Estate Commission does allow the broker to have more strict policies than theirs. They just set the baseline. So it's possible that Realty Unlimited could amend their policies and procedures. You guys all have access to your policies and procedures in Vision 2, by the way, if you ever need those. That broker could have that rule. But in this hypothetical example, they don't. All right, so switching it up just a little bit here. What about this billboard? So Jane Doe has prepared a billboard for advertising just in general Atlanta real estate. This one is actually technically okay because she is not advertising specific real estate. And so if it's not specific real estate, it just needs to be in the name and under the supervision of her broker. It's in the name of her broker. She's sending it in for approval. So technically it could be approved. Now that's not to say the broker might not come back from a creative standpoint and say, hey, I think we should move some things around just because a billboard is a pretty big deal, right? A lot of eyeballs are going to be on a billboard. Good. Comment came in. I feel like I walked away with the main points I needed to. Understanding not property and non-property and what those differences are, which is exactly what I want you guys to walk away with. I think everybody's in a good place. So I'm going to go ahead and start talking about brokerage relationships a little bit here. So Beretta, B-R-R-E-T-A. stands for Brokerage Relationships in Real Estate Transactions Act. So a little bit of history. I won't bore you too much, just a little bit. It was founded back in the 1990s. It was revised in the 2000s. And the reason that Beretta ultimately came about was because there was a lot of confusion before that time in real estate deals between mainly buyers as to who the broker actually represented. Because in the 80s and in years past, buyers would simply ride through a neighborhood and they would see a for sale sign and they would just call the listing agent. That's just who you used. This whole idea of buyer agency, which is really big now for a lot of us. Buyer agency was really not a thing back then. And buyers would maybe be disappointed, confused. Who is the agent? Who's the broker really looking out for? Now, the broker represented the seller, but it just wasn't as clear as what it could have been. So the Brokerage Relationships and Real Estate Transactions Act came into play, and it applies to everybody. So everyone who is licensed in Georgia, even if you happen to be watching this and you are grandfathered in terms of your CE, you have a 5-digit license number. There are those of you out there, and appreciate you very much. You guys are doing an amazing job, and most of you come to CE classes anyway. But Beretta still applies to you, and it does a lot of different things. It talks about disclosures, certain things we have to disclose to parties, such as any material relationships we may have with the other party, how we're going to be paid, what type of agency relationship do we not offer, and what do we offer. But it also it differentiates between a customer and a client. So it says that in order for someone to be a client, there has to be a brokerage engagement. Has to be a brokerage engagement. So GAR has written buyer brokerage agreements, seller listing agreements. That's how someone becomes a client, when they sign that agreement. Absent that agreement, they are a customer. Now, this is a big deal because this overrides common law of agency, which is a nationwide thing, and some states may still operate under that. And I will tell you from experience as a broker, it can be very confusing for folks who are licensed in other states and they come to Georgia and maybe they were operating under common law of agency, or perhaps they had purchased and sold real estate, a good bit in other states, and they come here. They oftentimes can be a little bit confused by that. And they can oftentimes think that we owe a fiduciary duty, which we actually don't. We'll talk about that a little bit today too. But the big takeaway I want everybody to have from this is a party's only a client if they sign that brokerage engagement. Otherwise, they're a customer, and we're limited as to what we can do for a customer. And so one example that was presented to me in my pre-license course, and I just kind of share with everybody, is if you were to pull up to a drive-through and you were to say, hey, I want a number one, and they were to respond back and say, okay, great, it'll be $7, see you at the window, versus if the person on the other side came back and said, Derek, I know that you are trying to watch your sodium. If you were to order the number 9, it has half the sodium, same great sauce that you love. And I might say, thank you so much for that. That was super helpful. I think I'll do the number 9. That's just a fun example of customer and client. We really are not supposed to be advising folks who haven't signed a brokerage engagement. Do you really understand the difference between a customer and a client? So I'm going to help you out. I'm not going to throw this one at you just yet. So an agent in Roswell shared with us that it took her a long time in the pre-license course before the light bulb finally went off between the differences. It is a light bulb. And I can tell you, whether you're a new agent, I talk with agents sometimes who have been licensed, I won't say any names, but for 20 and 30 years, who will say, the light bulb never went off for me until now, really understanding how important it is, because just marking a box in the contract does not make someone your client. And that is a misconception that can sometimes float around just because someone is a family member. It could be a spouse, could be a child. Just because we mark client relationship, maybe we should have a brokerage engagement with them because we're advising them, but just marking that box won't actually make them a client. So whatever the relationship is going to be, you want to establish it no later than the time you write the offer so that the offer is correct. But truly, and I get this question sometimes too, when should I have the buyer sign that buyer brokerage agreement? Before you advise them is definitely going to be the right answer. And naturally, you can kind of flow into it. because if you start showing someone houses or start working with someone, they are going to start asking questions, right? And they're eventually going to ask a question that's going to require advice based on experience and expertise that would give way into a conversation about agency. GAR has the ABCs of Agency, which is a helpful brochure, little pamphlet that you can give to parties too. I love that form. It helps me and also helps other parties even before they sign that brokerage engagement as to what type of relationship. Most of the time when they understand and you tell them a little bit about the difference, they want the client relationship. No agreements required for a customer.
Okay.
GAR does have, GAR is so helpful. They have forms for almost everything you can think of.
Okay.
They do have a customer form. The most popular customer form is the FSBO form, the authorization to show unlisted property. But you guys, single agency would just be a single agent forming a client relationship with a party. Dual agency, which is the one we don't offer, which would be an agent having a client relationship with the buyer and the client relationship with the seller. Designated agency would be two different agents with the same company, and both agents have a client relationship with the party they're working with. Transaction broker, one agent involved, customer on both sides. Best example of that, for sale by owner. Neighbor calls, says tenant wants to buy the property. They've been leasing it for the past 7 years. Can you help me? Absolutely, you can help. Do I want you to have a conversation with them about agency? Sure, but probably they've already come to terms with most of it and they just want you to serve as a scribe. And so transaction broker is probably the route that you're going to go in. So a few examples before we dive into FMLS and really start having fun with our contract. Buyer would like to offer $50,000 below the list price, no earnest money, in 30 days for the due diligence period. Are we going to draft the offer based on the request? And this is for a customer. Or are we going to inform the buyer that their offer stands very little chance of being accepted in the extreme seller's market that we're in? So if this is for a customer, we really should do A, right? We really should just draft the offer based on their request. It's really not our place to advise them. Do Georgia licensees owe a fiduciary duty? A little bit of a spoiler because I've already told you no, you guys don't. And I know sometimes they teach this wrong in the pre-license course, and they need to update that course. But in Georgia, we do not owe a fiduciary duty. And so if you're kind of wondering, well, Derek, what exactly is a fiduciary duty? This is a definition of it. It's a person who holds a legal or ethical relationship of trust with one or more parties. Typically, a fiduciary prudently takes care of money or other assets for another person. So if in conflict, we have a duty to follow the law, of course. And again, every state's different. So another state could handle it a different way. So you guys, we are about to switch over to FMLS. Access to GAR contract forms. If you're a realtor, you already have access to it through your paid realtor membership. If you are a non-realtor, you're with Saltsource Realty Georgia, you can purchase a license to use the GAR forms at forms.garealtor.com. Now, most of us are going to get our contract forms in FMLS or Georgia MLS, but you can also get them directly from GAR. You can go to garealtor.com and you can enter in your NERDS number, which is your NRDS number if you're a realtor, or your FPID number, which is your forms purchase ID number. If you purchase the forms, you can download PDFs there. So it's super rare, but if the MLS is ever down, just know you can get them there. It won't have the logo and they won't be smart forms, which are the ones we're going to look at today. So you'd have to pull them into DocuSign or another forms editor to really be able to use them there.